Today we're going to learn to play The Lord of the Rings The Card Game by Fantasy Flight Games. This is a hand management game to which you are controlling hobbits, elves, dwarves, wizards, or men, and you are trying to complete a quest. Now, the goal of this game is to complete all of the stages of the quest with at least one of your heroes still alive and the threat level below 50. If at any point your heroes are all dead or your threat level reaches 50, the game is over. So let's go ahead and look at the components and the setup for a two-player game. Before you set up your game, there's a couple of decisions that you have to make. The first is going to be which quest you're going to go on. On the quest card, you're going to see the setup that lets you know what goes in your staging area, as well as the symbols that are going to make up your encounter deck. The second decision that you need to make is which heroes you are going to control. You are going to control 3 heroes, and they can come from any of the 4 spheres of influence. As you're looking at these heroes, you're going to see the purple is your leadership sphere, the green is your lore sphere, blue is your spirit sphere, and orange is the tactics sphere. Now for your first game, I suggest using all of the heroes from the same sphere of influence. This will make it easier to purchase cards from your hand throughout the game. Now that you've made your decision, we're going to go ahead and finish the setup for this two-player game. You want your encounter deck in the middle at the top. Below, your quest. And then below that is what we call your staging area, which is where your enemies in waiting or your locations are going to be. Then on each side, each player is going to have their heroes. They're also going to have their player decks, which you want to make sure each one of your decks have a Gandalf card in them. So you want to shuffle Gandalf into your player deck. You also want to make handy your progress tokens, which are your footstep tokens. Your damage tokens, which is the red tokens. And then your resource tokens, which are silver. Then you also want to make sure that your threat level is in front of you. And for the beginning of the game, you want to make your threat level the total number of blue on your hero cards put together. So, just like if you're using the leadership, you would want to put 12, 9, and 8 together to give yourself 29 to start a threat level. Now you're going to go ahead and give the first player token out, and then we are ready to start the round. Each round is going to consist of 7 phases. The first phase is your resource phase. The second phase is going to be your planning phase, where you will get to spend your resources. The third phase is your quest phase. The fourth is travel. The fifth is encounter. The sixth is combat, and then the 7th and final phase is the refresh phase. So let's go ahead and start with the first phase, which is the resource phase. During this phase, you will give each hero a resource token. Then you will move on to the second phase, or the planning phase, in which, since this is the first round, you will receive 6 cards from your player deck. Once you look at these cards, if you are not satisfied, you can return them and get 6 other cards. But only on your first turn can you have a mulligan like this. Now during this phase, you can also use your resource tokens to purchase cards from your hand. The cost of the card is at the top in white. The other numbers that are on this card are your willpower, your attack, your defense, and then the big number in red is the number of hit points it would take to kill this ally. Phase 3 is the quest phase. During this, you will have an opportunity to put progress tokens on the current stage of the quest. You will need to have the total number of progress tokens equal to the number located on the quest card to move to the next stage of the quest. Now, during this phase, to add progress tokens to the quest, you are going to need to have your willpower strength, or your what looks to be a sun symbol, be higher than the total threat number, which is the topmost black number, on all of the cards in the staging area. If your number does not exceed the threat number, then that is the total number that you will go up on your threat dial. So to commit characters to the quest, you will turn them sideways, which indicates that they are exhausted. Once you have committed your characters to the quest, you will flip over encounter cards equal to the number of players. So for this, you would flip over 2. Then you would look at the combined willpower, which is 4 in this case, with the combined threat strength, which is 7. You would go up 3 on each of your threat dials. Once you have resolved this quest, you will then move into the travel phase. During this phase, you can choose to travel to any of the locations in the staging area. Now, if you can't agree on where to travel or if to travel, the first player will make the decision if and where to travel. If you choose to travel, you're going to take the location out of the staging area and put it next to your quest. Now, what that means is that the threat that was in this location will no longer count during the quest phase. Also, you will have to put the number of progress tokens equal to the number on the location card to remove it, to then go back to the quest stage that you are on. So this location card supersedes your quest card. After you've made that decision and put the location card up with your quest, we will move on to the encounter phase. This is where you have a couple of steps that will start moving enemies out of this staging area. The first is you have a choice. You can choose to engage any enemy in the staging area. Once everyone has had a chance to engage, if they wanted to engage an enemy, you will then, starting with the first player, take the highest enemy that is equal to or lower than your threat number and put them in front of you. So, since his threat number is 32 and 25 is the highest below 32, the forest spider would come over to the first player. And then you would go to the second player. Since Their threat level is 32, and there is a king spider, which is 20. The king spider would go in front of the second player. And you would continue this process along until there are no enemies left in the staging area lower than the threat level. Phase 6 is the combat phase. And during this phase, you are going to deal an encounter card to each engaged enemy. Then, you're going to start with the first player, and you would choose which enemy to resolve first, but since there's only one, it will have to be the forest spider. Next would be to declare a defender for this attack. So, you have the option to let it go undefended, and in which case you would not have any defense, and all of the attack strength would go to one hero. Or you can choose to exhaust one of your heroes to defend the attack. So in this case, Glowing would defend against the forest spider. Then you are going to flip over the encounter card. Now, if there is the line on the enemy card, then the shadow effect is what you apply to the forest spider. If it does not have a shadow effect on the card, then you can simply discard the encounter card. So this one does, and it says the defending player must choose and discard one attachment he controls. So luckily he doesn't have one, but if he did, he would have to discard it. And that card will remain with the forest spider until the end of this phase. Now we're going to determine the damage. So you are going to take the attack strength of the forest spider, which is 2, versus the defense of Glowing, which is 1, and you are going to give him that in damage tokens. So Glowing has 1 damage. After you've determined the damage from the attack of the enemy, you may then attack enemies with any unexhausted players left. So we could attack him here by exhausting this character. And we would do the same thing and determine the damage that the enemy takes. So in this case we have a strength of 2 and he has a defense of 1, so he would get 1 damage. Now, this enemy would stay here with the first player until he had a total number of damage tokens equal to the number you have on the card. So after 4, the forest spider would then leave that player alone and be discarded from the game. Phase 7 is the refresh phase, where you will ready all of your exhausted characters, move the first player token to the next player, and move your threat level up 1. That would conclude the round, and then you would keep going round and round again until you completed all of the stages of the quest, or, like we mentioned earlier, all 3 of your heroes died, or your threat level reached 50. Now, the great thing about this game is that it is a living card game. It's an LCG, in which case they always release every month or 2. They'll always be releasing more content, and there is already a ton of content available to customize and make the game harder, or to just go on many, many, many more adventures. So I hope you enjoyed the Learn to Play video today, and thank you for watching.